All right, it is now 7 o'clock. I want to say thank you and welcome to Aura's final candidate forum for the 2020 council elections. We'll be speaking with our guest, Councilmember Jimmy Flannigan, and candidate, sorry, spacing on names here. Please don't cross me.
Jennifer Mushtaler.
Sorry I always forget the last names. Jennifer Mushtaler. Before we begin our candidate forum, though, we do want to spend some time talking about some of the other things that'll be on the for election this year, primarily Props A and B and how they relate to Austin's Project Connect project. And for that, we are co-hosting this portion of our event with Farm&City and Friends of Austin Neighborhood. Before we begin, I would like to give a few minutes to Jay Crossley and to Roger Colvin, respectively, to give a 1-minute introduction about their organizations. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jay to talk about Farm&City, and then pass it to Roger to talk about Friends of Austin Neighborhood. And if you could just give us a minute about what your organization is and why you felt it was important to talk about Project Connect. Jay, floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. And Farm&City is a 501c3 dedicated to high quality urban and rural human habitat in Texas in perpetuity. And so we work across the state on public policy issues and at the state level, but also city, county, and MPO level, and across a bunch of issues, but generally transportation, urban planning, sustainability, and equity things. And so we lead the Vision Zero Texas movement. We do transit advocacy kind of at the state level, that we desperately need more transit funding, and also some equity in transportation, and then sustainable regional growth stuff. And I've been involved with the Project Connect Advisory Network for the whole time, I guess, or from this round. And so I think it's an awesome plan and care about it a lot. So thanks.
Hi, everybody. I am Roger Colvin. I'm currently treasurer of Friends of Austin Neighborhoods. You may have noticed that neighborhood has come to mean a vocal group of residents, usually homeowners, who oppose change near their homes in many cases. And unfortunately, that sometimes results in excluding new and diverse neighbors that would enrich the lives of everyone in the area. So Friends of Austin Neighborhoods is a coalition of neighborhood associations and individual residents throughout the city, reclaiming the word neighborhood for the voices of inclusion, moving beyond the protectionism that too often dominates conversations about neighborhoods. If you'd like to be a part of this cause, please join us for free at www.atxfriends.org. Thanks.
Thank you both. These distinguished gentlemen, Jay and Roger, will be joining us in a panel discussion along with two others who I'd like to introduce now. First, Susan Somers, who is a founding member of the Wheel Deal, which is a set of policy platforms that are meant to guide Project Connect and what we think it should look like. And also Caleb Pritchard, who's part of the, I believe it's the Project Connect Ambassador. Sorry, I'm not good with my notes today, y'all. Caleb is part of the Transit Now campaign, and also very knowledgeable about the Project Connect process and the bonds that are going to be going up here in November. So thank you both for being here as well. And I have a few set of questions just to get it out to people who may not know as much about this, who haven't followed it as closely as we all have for the last year plus that we've been doing it. The first question really is just pretty basic. What is Prop A and what is Prop B? And Susan, I wondered if you'd be willing to answer that question.
Sure. Let me actually address Prop B first, because I think it's a little more in people's wheelhouse who are understanding normal propositions and ballot questions, and then I'll come back to Prop A. So Prop B is a bond which is going to fund predominantly what we call active transportation projects. So it's a general obligation bond where the city will be able to sell bonds to raise money to build sidewalks, bike infrastructure, urban trail infrastructure. There's a few other, I guess you might say, street rebuilding types of projects in that package as well. There's some Vision Zero and safety elements. There's also some safe routes to school elements. I think I covered most all of it with what I just listed, but Jay's nodding. I'm looking at Jay. So it's a package of exciting sort of active transportation projects. Prop A is a little bit different or unique to some of the other types of ballot questions we've seen before, because it's not a traditional bond election where the city will go out and sell bonds for a specific amount where we're authorizing them. It's actually what we call a TRE, which stands for tax rollback election. And that means that we're actually creating sort of a new line item tax on your tax bill, just like you might pay a tax to, you know, right now you would have your county, your city, AISD. Central Health is a great example. It's sort of similar to the Central Health where we pay for services for healthcare for low-income people. What Prop A will do is we will have a permanent line item on our tax bill that will help us fund really, really important construction of transit infrastructure in our city. So that can be, the money can actually be used for a variety of things. So it can be used not just for construction, but also for operation of future transit systems. And so basically we've created Cap Metro through really a 3-year public process has created a master plan vision for transit in our city, which is very compelling and exciting. And this would fund that project in increments over the course of 20, 30 years. We'll be able to build out these projects. Also, very excitingly included in this project, City Council has designated that there will be money in this project that will go to affordable housing, and specifically to affordable housing that is transit oriented. So what we might call equitable transit oriented development. Making sure that people from all income levels can access and use this transit, because of late, sometimes we see a concern that when you build transit, it can actually raise property values nearby, or perhaps could create displacement or accelerate gentrification. So City Council has taken a really affirmative stance. It's actually the most affordable housing money we've ever passed in our city. It's pretty crazy. So we just passed a huge affordable transit housing bond 3 years ago, and now we've come back and we're putting more money into it that's going to be aligned with transit, which I think is actually, in a lot of ways, to me, even more exciting to make sure that we're putting transit housing that's affordable to everyone along our transit routes. So that's kind of, I guess, the brief overview of what Prop A does. There's some other technical things because it's a new funding line or entity. We're going to create some special governance things that go along with that as well. But I think that's sort of the bird's eye view of what we're looking at here.
Thank you. So in summary, Prop A or Prop B is meant to cover a variety of different different projects and transit-related objectives, and Prop A is the tax set aside. I think is a TRE is what you called it, to fund the Project Connect over the next few years. Caleb, could you speak a little further about what are the differences in funding sources between Prop A and Prop B?
Yeah, hi everybody. I just wanted to say first off, thanks for having me here, and I will say that I've been working on this in different capacities for a very long time, and I've been living it and breathing it. So if I do get off into the weeds or anything, I absolutely encourage you to pull me back in and stop being a weird, wonky, wacko guy. But so yeah, I think Susan covered did all that in pretty good detail. I think the important thing to note about Prop A, which is what Transit Now is really trying to, not at all saying anything bad against Prop B, I support both of them, but Transit Now, the group I work for, is working to pass Prop A, which is this major transit investment, includes light rail, commuter rail in the Eastern Crescent, new enhanced bus services, bus lines across the city, park and rides, yada, yada, yada. it's a big, ambitious investment, but one that I think would improve the quality of life across the region. But I think the thing to remember is that, yes, we are asking taxpayers to raise their taxes to build this, but it is, I think, on your total tax bill, the check that you would be sending into Bruce Elfont each year it would represent an increase of about 4% on your total tax bill. There's a lot of misinformation going on about that, but we're only talking about 4%. The median homeowner who owns a median home value of $360,000 is paying somewhere around, I think, an extra $285 per month or year. Or I should know that, actually, $285 extra on your annual bill. So that comes out to be about less than 80 cents per day. So that's really exciting stuff. And as Susan mentioned, there's also some major considerations for affordable housing and displacement mitigation, where, like she said, we passed that one in 2018, and now this one, we're talking $300 million. It's effectively, as a city, we're putting up $500 million for affordable housing in just 2 years, which I think is absolutely incredible. On top of the fact that if you are able to live near one of these corridors with enhanced service, you might be able to ditch a car and save yourself $10,000 per year, which is effectively an extra $800 a month or whatever you can spend on rent or groceries or healthcare or childcare, anything like that. So, and then whereas, of course, Prop B is a bond election, just general obligation bond election, and I believe the numbers on that when we crunched it was something around like a few dollars per month on your tax bill. But that's going to be a citywide investment, which is also very exciting because there's certain parts of the city that have missing sidewalks and broken sidewalks, and it's a major investment on equity.
Thank you. One of the other components that will be funded in the initial investment for Project Connect is the creation of a downtown transit tunnel. And I was wondering, Roger, could you talk a little bit about that and why is that included?
So I'm actually not a panelist, so I will defer to one of the other three folks to take that one on.
I can take it. So it's crazy because if you had asked me, when I started, I think I went to the first Project Connect. At that time, it was multimodal. In fact, the first meeting, I don't think we even had a name. We started off as the Multimodal Advisory Committee, which we were advising the city and Cap Metro on Project Connect, as well as on, at that time, the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, and then we became the Project Connect Advisory Network. And if you had told me that we would be talking about some tunneled transit, grade separated transit, honestly, I'm not sure I would have believed you at that time. Just like in the last 4 years, the scope of what we can achieve has really been widened, and it's really amazing. So the idea behind the downtown tunnels and what it will allow us to do is really several things. So number one is when you grade separate transit so that it's not only, so the entire line for light rail that we're talking about. So we're discussing in Project Connect potentially 2 light rail lines. And they would be in dedicated transit ways so that they would not have conflicts. They wouldn't be like a bus on Guadalupe by campus stuck behind other traffic. Somebody darts out in front, they would have their own lane all the time. But even any kind of surface running transit is subject to, if there's a crash at an intersection, or like I said, if a bike darts out, light rail is still subject to that if it's center running. So the idea behind the downtown tunnel is that through the sort of the most impacted, most congested part of the transit line, which is downtown, it will be completely grade separated. So there won't be any transit. It'll be like, it's not, I'm a little cautious about using the word subway because these will be light rail vehicles, not heavy rail vehicles like we see in, a big city metro like DC or New York. But it will be basically what people think of as a subway, like underground, will be having that. And so it will just stop at the station. It can go right on. It's going to be a very rapid form of transit and will experience very few conflicts. So it's going to be an extremely high level of transit service that we're going to be able to provide for this. So I think that that's one of the advantages. Another sort of more technical advantage is it allows us to scale the vehicles a little bit bigger. One of the things with a surface running light rail system is the length of your vehicles is sort of contingent on the number of, on the length of your city blocks. So like if your, a block is, I'm making all these numbers up, these are not real numbers, but if your block is 50 feet and your trains are 25 feet, then you can only, your vehicle, cars, you can only have 2 cars in a train. Well, when you create a total grade separation, that allows you, as you scale up and you get more and more ridership, you can add another train car to that consist, as we say in transit stuff. So you can easily add cars, remove cars, and really respond to demand in that way. And you're not really limited by the length of your block, because obviously if you have a transit station surface running on a city street, you can't stop that and have the last car sitting out in the middle of the intersection, right? You can't block the box with your car. So that's another thing. And usually your shortest blocks are probably going to be in your historic downtown. So there's a couple kind of cool advantages with that. So it's really, really capitalizing on giving a really high level of service. It also says like, and I could go either way on this, but it also means that you don't have to take lanes away from cars through downtown, which for some people could be an advantage. You're sort of retaining some space that you can retain car lanes. You can retain lanes for if you want to widen your sidewalks or create really high level, really high quality separated bike lanes, right? So you can do those types of things. Whereas, if you're working with a certain width of street, unless you go out and condemn or tear down buildings, which we don't want to do, that's the size of street you've got. But when you start grade separating, that gives you a lot more room to play around with, both for, I would say, looking at transit, and then your assets like sidewalks, bikes, and how you want to dedicate that space. So I think it's something that, like I said, 3 years ago, would I have imagined that we were discussing this? No. When I first started hearing about it, I was like, wow, this is where we are in Austin. We're having this conversation about grade separated transit, and we are, and that's super exciting.
Thank you, Susan. So Jay, we heard from Caleb a bit about how property taxes will be affected for homeowners, and I was wondering if you could talk a little about for renters. What would the average renter pay in additional taxes under Prop A?
Yeah, whenever the city talks about a thing like this, we are told the numbers of how it will affect the median homeowner. But the majority of Austinites are renters. And so I've been sort of digging into what does the average Austinite actually pay in property taxes? And if you're a renter, you're paying property taxes through your landlord. And so I'm fairly happy with the number now that the average housing unit in Austin is actually worth about $232,000, whereas the median home is more like $380,000. And so most of the numbers people have been talking about of the impact of this is really on sort of upper middle class family, whereas the average Austinite, you're looking at more like $203 a year or $17 a month impact, and that's average. So if we're talking about low income people, it's much lower. And so we also did another angle where we looked at just like one apartment complex. And for a normal, it was an apartment complex on St. John's near North Lamar that would have access to this transit. And it's about $65 a year for somebody who's renting a 1-bedroom unit in an apartment complex.
Thank you. So Caleb, we've been talking a little bit about, the rail aspect of the project, Project Connect and of Prop A, and I was wondering if you could dive into a few of the other community benefits that Prop B offers, and just like what specifically are those?
Prop B, what doesn't it offer? A healthier city, a greener city, more opportunities to safely bike and walk and get around your neighborhood, go to work on clean, safe sidewalks and bike trails, urban trails, all that stuff. I mean, that affords just better health outcomes for folks. It affords better air quality, better water quality, and I mean, it just, like I said, there's also a major equity issue. I believe the sidewalk master plan identified most of our missing sidewalks, high priority, very high priority sidewalks. The plurality of them are in like District 1 on the east side and other eastern areas. So just as a matter of social, equity and investment, hurrying up and investing, building those missing components is hugely important. As I mentioned, safer, cleaner, and just, how could you not want more sidewalks and bike lanes and urban trails? In addition, I will say also that Project Connect and Prop A will fund better sidewalks and other infrastructure along the corridors. So, I mean, we're getting a whole just incredible amounts of investment in these critical, vital pieces of infrastructure that, frankly, cities across the world have, but we decided for decades to go ahead and put all our money in just building roads here and there. And, now it's time to play catch up. So I think that, both of these investments get us light years closer to achieving what, at the time when we passed the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan last year, we set a goal for having a 50-50 mode split where, half of all our commutes would be outside of single occupant vehicles. It seemed a little ambitious, but this is actually, we have a package now before the voters that I think, both props A and B, that will substantially move us towards what, might have been sort of unachievable, or what people could have cynically believed was unachievable just a year ago.
Thank you.
Do you mind, Cesar, if I just jump in just on the benefits of Prop B?
Sure.
Just one way to say it is Prop B will provide safe multimodal access to hundreds of thousands of people. And safety is a big problem in Austin, just like in the rest of Texas. And that the cost of congestion is a bad thing, and it hurts people, it wastes people's time. But the cost of safety, the economic cost of safety for Austinites is about twice that of congestion. And the comprehensive cost, when you factor in years of life lost and pain and suffering, is about 10 times as much. And so we have in Texas, we lead the nation in this problem. And so this bond, and another key point is the city of Austin has really good data on the need and on how to fix these safety issues. And so that money will be going, sort of be the best transportation spending in the state of Texas to be giving people safe access. Based on, like Caleb was saying, we have very good maps of where sidewalks are needed. We have very good maps on where crashes are happening and how we could stop those crashes from happening. And so I think there's a lot of economic benefit and pain and suffering benefit of Prop B. And it means you won't have to drive as much. And when you do drive, it'll be safer.
Thank you, Jay. So we only have a few minutes left before we transition to our candidate forum. And I just want to have each of you answer the same question, basically. And that is, for Project Connect, what is one thing you really want to make sure people understand about it? So I'll start with Susan. Just one thing you think people, like if you had to boil it down to one thing people should know about Project Connect that they may not have heard through all the noise, what is that?
I really want people to know that it's not a bond. I hear people saying that a lot, and I even find myself saying the word bond. Sometimes it's not a bond. We're talking about a permanent source of funding for transit, construction, operations, maintenance. It can do it all. And we've rolled in affordable housing. This is amazing. This is what I've been working for years. We've talked about why we haven't done transit right in Austin, why different bonds have been defeated. This is the project I've poured basically 5 years of my life into as an activist. And it's just going to be amazing. You're going to have highly frequent, safe, fast, and reliable transit that doesn't compete with cars. It's going to be better alternative to your car. This is the way that we can transform our city to fight climate change and to just make our lives better and safer. It's going to be amazing. And we've got to do this thing.
Thank you. Caleb?
Kind of sums up my thoughts and feelings as well. I mean, it's truly, as my former boss, Councilmember Harper Madison, pointed out once, you know, if you're playing how to improve life in Austin, bingo, this is like the card you want to have, because it does address the fact that transportation and mobility make up for 35% of our greenhouse gas emissions, and that was in 2010, according to our community climate plan. And that's like, you know, we've seen a lot more people move here, and people, you know, driving after the economic recovery. So we're talking about a lot of emissions that we have the potential to cut down on. We're seeing fires right now on the Pacific coast, and that's going to be our future if we continue to just do what we do. I think it's important in terms of, you know, safety, affordability, not just the investments that we're making, but also the opportunity to give more people the opportunity to get rid of a car. And there's about a billion other reasons that I could tick off, but I will say that it's probably important to remember that right now Cap Metro is, I mean, we all want, I think most people would say, and we've seen this in survey after survey, you know, people want better transit in the city, but right now Cap Metro is pretty much running at, you know, full capacity. It has its only funding option basically is the 1 cent sales tax, and you know, you can't really get much more service out of that than what we're getting. We've seen transit ridership going up, you know, before pandemic happened, but we've also seen study after study that shows that, in fact, in cities where transit, they have robust transit services, there's not really any clusters happening in transit, which is important to know. But you know, we're talking about people wanting more better transit. We're not going to get it unless we make a big investment like this. And so I think it's just, you know, and once we do make this investment, not only do we get the Project Connect stuff, but, you know, that frees up Cap Metro to then go ahead and start investing that you know, scarce money into other services and routes. So just regular bus service. So which, you know, as we know, is according to the numbers we've seen, largely transit dependent riders right now are disproportionately Black and brown. So this is a matter of racial justice and just you know, making sure that we're not investing in a multi-tiered transportation system where you know, one group of people have better access to services and education, jobs, healthcare, and all that other stuff that other people don't. So I know that's not one thing to know about Project Connect. There's a lot of things, but if there's one thing I want you to know, that I love it. I love it to death, and I would marry Project Connect.
Thank you, Caleb. Jay.
So my one thing, I guess, is just that I think people don't understand the scale of how great this proposal is, and that we about something over 100,000 people before COVID had the privilege of being able to get where they needed to go on transit every day in Austin, and Project Connect will take us up to 300,000. And it's basically doubling the amount of people who have access by transit. And the reason is because people in Texas don't realize that we are suffering under transit austerity measures, and we are unique. Our metro regions are unique in the country in how little transit funding we have. And for every $1 per capita spent on transit in Austin, there are $7 spent per capita in Seattle, or $5 in New York or Boston. So when you go to New York or Boston, and it seems like their transit agencies must be a lot smarter, there's 5 times as much money being spent on providing that access. And this vote will start fixing that, but won't get us anywhere near that level of funding. And so the people of Texas have suffered through these mistakes in transportation policy, and this will start heading us in the right direction. So.
All right. Jay, Susan, Caleb, thank you so much for taking your time to answer these questions about this big shift that we have a chance to affect in a few months. We really appreciate our partners at Farm&City and FAN for helping to host this and getting the word out about it. The whole point of these forums is just to put out as much information as we can about the choices people are going to have for their future and what they want to make their city look like come November. And speaking of choices that they get to have in November, we have our last candidate forum for District 6. And I really want to thank Councilmember Jimmy Flannigan and Jennifer Mushtaler for both joining us today and being a part of this forum. Again, if you're just joining us, you've come to Aura's last candidate forum. We are recording, so we will be able to put this out onto our channel after the event. If you need captions, we also have a link available to give you live captions as they're being read. And to our candidates joining us today, thank you again for being here. I'll be asking a set of questions that we had sent through our questionnaire, which you've had a chance to look over. And then at the end, if we have time, we're going to be asking questions from our audience. So please, for anyone participating today, if you do have a question, please put it in the chat, or you can send it directly to Timothy Bray, who is collecting and curating those questions for us. Before we begin, though, I do want to give each of you 2 minutes just to introduce yourselves and say hello. I'm going to go ahead and start with Councilmember Flannigan. You have 2 minutes, please.
Excellent. Thank you, Cesar, and thanks, Aura and FAN, for putting this event together. I am Jimmy Flannigan, this current council member for District 6, a 20-year resident of Northwest Austin, formerly a small business owner, formerly president of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, organizer of the Northwest Austin Coalition. I am the first openly gay man to serve on the city council and the first Williamson County resident. And in the last 6 years, even since before becoming a council member, I've held more than 60 different town halls, meetings, and community events to listen and engage on every topic facing our city. And I've turned that unparalleled community engagement into solutions, new roads and infrastructure in all corners of District 6, slowing the rise of government spending, and being a policy innovator during this insane pandemic. I have also been a leader on citywide issues of affordability, equity, and justice as chair of the Judicial Committee and the Public Safety Committee, chair of the Regional Economic Development Board, chair of the Community Activation Network, representing the city on CAMPO and CAPCOG, taking District 6 to the head of the table on some of the most critical issues facing our city and our region. This is not a job for the uninformed or the political opportunist. The challenges we face are serious and complex, and this city and the district needs leadership unafraid to be honest and direct and to take these challenges head on. It is not enough to simply say what you stand against. You must be able to articulate what you stand for and how you're going to get the votes to do it. I've proven my ability to bring solutions to our corner of the city and have earned the trust and support of the partners you need to get it done. I'm proud to be the only endorsed Democrat in this race, with the support of 5 District 6 overlapping Democratic State House members and hundreds of community leaders in the district and across the city. But the work is far from done, and that's why I'm running for re-election and asking for your support.
Thank you. And please, Ms. Mushtaler.
Good evening. It's nice to see all of you tonight. I'm Dr. Jennifer Mushtaler. I'm a board-certified physician in practice here in Austin. I've been taking care of many of you in the community for over 13 years. I have 2 children. They're both attending they're in the Leander ISD School District, and we've been living out here for about 13 years. I'm also a small business owner. I started and founded my practice and did that for about 10 years recently. That has rolled under the hospital. During the pandemic, I've been serving on executive leadership teams and working with Travis County Med and our public health on our COVID response, how to best formulate our hospital plans, and how to take care of our public. Over the last several years, I've become more civically engaged. My neighborhood, where I live, is River Place, and we were annexed by the city of Austin a number of years back, and that started my journey into civic engagement. I started by serving on a limited district that was voted in by the residents here, and have grown into capacity on our homeowners association. I'm now serving as the president of both the homeowners association and the limited district. Those service opportunities have engaged me with other neighborhoods in my district, and those opportunities have engaged me with other neighborhoods across the city. I've had opportunity to work with Jimmy, and I do respect him very much, but we do differ in how we would approach the next few years. I think it's very important for people to understand that the COVID situation is not going to blink and go away, and the challenges facing our city, citywide, need medical leadership to solve them. The homeless crisis we're experiencing is a public health crisis, and the solutions that have been implemented are not solving the problems effectively for the people who are experiencing homelessness and for the people trying to get to their jobs and live their daily lives. I believe in not only representing my constituents, but also I believe that the job of a city council member is to advocate for the entire city. So even though we may get elected from a particular district, we need to consider the city's growth and success as a whole. Look forward to answering your questions and getting to know you guys better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mushtaler. And I'll go ahead and ask the first question to you as well. And it's, what do you see as the top challenges and priorities for your district?
For District 6, we're at the northwest corridor of the city. And so we do, as y'all are aware, we span across 2 counties, both Travis and Williamson County. And we have 3 independent school districts that are within this district. So there's a lot of interplay between the different organizations and where the boundary lines go. District 6 is a connector and a gateway out to a lot of areas of what are currently the most reachable, affordable housing in Cedar Park, Lakeway, Leander, and Georgetown. And transportation is a very significant issue in our district. How to grow District 6 is a challenge because we're topographically challenged with areas of preserve and federal preserve land, and we have the number 5 highest wildfire risk in the nation in this district. So I think that's one of our growth challenges, is how to do it in a smart way and in a responsible way, because the growth is happening. The question is just how do we make it work and how do we keep it affordable? So I think that's one of the big challenges facing my district currently.
Thank you. And Jimmy, same question. What are the challenges and priorities you see for District 6?
Well, you know, when I ran in 2016 and 2014, that question was an easy one. It was traffic, traffic, traffic. Those were the top 3 issues in a word. And in the last 3.5 years, we've added new roads to the plan. We've upgraded. We're planning to upgrade 183. It's already approved and funded. We've got new service coming out to the Lakeline Station. Of course, Project Connect is going to provide more commuter service both to the 4 Points area and to Lakeline Station, rail to the airport, all of that stuff. So, I mean, traffic is still going to be a key issue for District 6. And it is a complicated challenge because you've got the 620 area, which the state, while adding items to the plan, keeps taking the money away. And I fought hard to prevent that from happening. But unfortunately, the regional partners decided that I-35 was going to be the more important project, despite getting all of my colleagues from the city to vote against it. The other challenges, obviously homelessness and public safety, these are issues that are not going to go away either. And the council's plans to solve that, you know, I chair the Public Safety Committee, and being able to lead on those issues and bringing pragmatic solutions about both the challenges of safety and the challenges of a department at the city that has doubled in the last 20 years or in the last 10 years, while the population has only increased by 30%. You know, these are challenges that then lead into affordability. And when you talk to District 6, which is about half renters, half property owners, I'm a renter myself, you have to talk about the issues of housing and growth. In District 6, it's not a hard question, actually, because we have a lot of old commercial property with half empty parking lots along the 183 corridor, where we have a bus line that's much of it walkable to the Lakeline Station. That is the type of redevelopment opportunity that represents the best chance for growth that can also include affordable housing to keep our essential workers closest to the jobs that they work at.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and ask you the next question as well, to have it start off with you. The Austin Strategic Housing Blueprint calls for the creation of 60,000 units affordable to households making 80% of the median family income, and an additional 75,000 units that are affordable to households making over 80% of the MFI. And that's over the next 10 years. What steps will you take to make that a reality?
Well, housing affordability is a complicated math problem of supply and demand. And we have to be able to build housing and find places where the infrastructure can support more housing at all price levels. You know, we've tried multiple different versions of that plan as a council. And, you know, the problem is nobody wants to be the place where more housing gets built. And everybody fights that and says, well, you know, I don't oppose density, just not here. Well, that's just not a long-term strategy for success. You have to be able to articulate where you're going to build new housing. In District 6, Those opportunities, like I said, are in commercial properties that have half-empty parking lots. When you get into central Austin areas, you're talking about major transportation and drainage improvements in a lot of central neighborhoods. This is where more housing has got to go. And it is not about building ginormous towers like you'll hear people misrepresent. This is about the smart and gentle growth of infill development that can support small-scale affordable housing and ADUs in areas where it's walkable to transit and walkable to services, and the types of larger developments that we have seen in District 6 surrounding the Lakeline area and up and down 183.
Thank you. And Jennifer, same question to you.
Thank you. And do you mind repeating the question for me? I'm sorry.
No problem. Sorry about that. So the Austin Strategic Housing Blueprint calls for the creation of 60,000 units affordable to households making under 80% of the MFI, and an additional 75,000 units affordable to households making over 80% of the MFI. And that's over the next 10 years. What steps will you take to make that a reality?
So I do think we need to have variations in affordable housing across the market. And it is a complex problem of supply and demand, but I disagree with how to approach the solution. The city's current solution has been ramrodded down the throats of the existing residents, whether they're property owners or they're renters, and it's taken away the voice of the neighborhoods, which is what's drawing people to these areas to begin with. So I think rather than spending money on litigation to sue the residents of Austin, I think we need to come back and engage those neighborhoods, because I think there is definitely an acceptance of growth, and it's not a case of NIMBY where nobody wants it in their backyard. It's how do we integrate it smartly into the current neighborhood and give the supporting infrastructure to allow that to happen. So I would engage the neighborhoods more. I would stop the lawsuit process. I would go back and engage those neighborhoods and come from the neighborhoods on the inside to out saying, okay, where can we bring this in? How can we create these corridors and transitions so they fit with our plans on having multimodal transportation options?
Thank you. And in a related question, I'll go ahead and ask this to you first as well. What is your position on neighborhood combining conservation districts, also known as NCCDs, in the new land development code when we get to actually write it? Should they be dissolved, modified, preserved, and if so, why?
Well, I think we need to have buy-in. We're not going to make progress if we don't have buy-in. So I think given the status of the litigation that's in place, I really think it makes more sense to work with the neighborhoods that have these NCCDs, and that will allow us to come up with plans to accommodate more units and work to resolve it. I think right now, unfortunately, we've hit a stalemate where we've got a problem and not a good solution, and we really need to get everybody to work together so that we can solve the common goals for affordability and keeping the neighborhoods that people love.
Thank you. And Jimmy, same question to you.
You know, these are challenging issues, and it is insufficient to say that you just need more engagement. The city, not just from my tenure, but prior to it, spent years engaging neighborhoods, talking to folks, going to neighborhood meetings, having town halls. I did 20 of them on the land development code myself, just in District 6. There's not some magic solution that you're going to find with engagement. Your question about NCCDs is a simple one. I don't think neighborhoods should be able to opt out of solving their part of the problem in this city. And NCCDs are a function that have protected central Austin neighborhoods alone, that have pushed development out into District 6 in ways that are both environmentally unfriendly and have exacerbated the challenges of growth and sprawl. The NCCD issue is not something that you just can say, well, if you just keep talking about it, then you'll find some way to make it work. But that's just not how it works. We have to be very realistic with these neighborhoods and be honest with these central Austin neighborhoods, some of whom have openly said that all of the new development should go out into the greenfield. All new development, that is what these NCCD neighborhood leaders have said. That is not a tenable position for District 6.
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and have the next question for you as well, Jimmy. And this one's several questions wrapped in one. But it's, with the COVID-19 pandemic likely to continue to spread for the next year, what is your strategy to help essential workers, renters, and the most vulnerable populations in Austin?
Well, I've been really proud of the work that the council has done around the pandemic. It has been unfortunate that our state government and our federal government don't even meet the minimal test of bare functionality. Cities are not set up to build testing capacity or develop vaccines. We are the place where we connect our vulnerable populations to those resources. After South by Southwest was canceled, which I think was the right decision, and was one of the first global decisions that showed that US cities were going to take this seriously, I drafted the very first resolution in response to the pandemic that talked about the economic fallout and the challenges for our essential workers and for the live music industry and for the tourism industry that in the beginning we thought was going to be the primary factor, and then as it spread has impacted every corner of our economy. And then as a council member, I've supported and developed programs to help small businesses, to invest in childcare resources, to invest in our nonprofits, and to even help businesses cover the cost of COVID compliance, in addition to the programs that I've supported from my colleagues that have helped individual renters through the RISE Fund and other programs using some local monies, but also leaning heavily on the federal response. And unfortunately, like I said, cities are not built to scale this problem. It is essential that our state and federal leaders step up, because now we've built the systems under my leadership and the leadership of the council members. We've built the systems that are ready to go, and we just need the federal support to implement.
Thank you. Dr. Mushtaler.
Thank you. As a physician working in this daily and on this with executive committees, I disagree. You need medical leadership. The City Council has failed to invest in the public health infrastructure in this city for years, and you are seeing this play out in the inequities in the illness. Our public health structure has put in proposals to City Council since the year 2017 that haven't made it to the dais on how to restructure the central health, We Are Blood, and coordinate and organize that under EMS. So I think it's time for medical leadership to step forward and show us the way out of this. And I can talk the medical talk with the executive teams, and I can help bring those plans forward to City Council so that we can be prepared moving forward. I said this at the beginning of our meeting. Unfortunately, this isn't going away anytime soon, and how we navigate is going to be very tricky. I do agree that we need to look out for our small businesses and our creative arts industry, but part of that begins with a comprehensive public health department that is fully funded with modern technology to be able to do its job. We don't have enough physicians and providers in place to reach the communities that are suffering. And we've got to get that infrastructure in place. So that will be a key tenet of my service on the City Council, is to shore up our public health so that all areas of our populations can be taken care of.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and ask this next one to you as well. And it's something we were talking about earlier today. So as Project Connect rolls out, what is your vision to roll, your vision as far as priorities for rolling out construction over the next few years? And are you in support of the 8.75 cents tax increase proposed to pay for it?
Thank you. I don't think at this juncture, I don't have a strong opinion on Proposition A because it's on the ballot, it's going to the voters. I am in strong support of multimodal transportation options for the city, and I agree that we can't keep kicking the can down the road. Unfortunately, our district does not feel that Proposition A is bringing a lot out to that corridor, and we're concerned about that. But ultimately, the voters are going to decide if that tax is worth the investment for them or not. The only thing coming out to District 6 is a park and ride and a bus stop and some improvements to the already existing red line. So it doesn't do a lot for the corridors that didn't get the funding at the state level. And we'll just have to see how the voters decide. I think depending on what comes from that will be then what are our next steps. So if it passes, Then we want good, strong oversight to make sure that the process moves smoothly and that we don't get into a construction boondoggle, but that we actually achieve the goal markers of getting the system in place. And if it doesn't pass, then we need to understand why, so that we can begin to refigure that and not let the hard work of people who've been putting this together for 4 to 5 years go wasted, but rethink about how do we reach the importance of what people need to really get where they need to go and make it work in another fashion.
Thank you. Councilmember, what is your vision for the rollout of Project Connect, and are you in support of the 8.75 cent tax increase to pay for it?
Well, I'd say first, just to address the prior question, no council has invested more in public health than this one over the last 5 years. It has been historic investments. And I think my opponent might be confused about the difference between central health and the county's authority, where some of the issues that she talked about is where those issues are solved, and the more limited focus of Austin Public Health, where investments have been pretty significant. But as it comes to Project Connect, you know, this is a multi-generational historic investment for the city. You know, we can't be thinking about just, does an investment get me from the street on McNeil to the street on Anderson Mill? Because that's not how District 6 is built. We're not built for that type of local transit service. But what it does do is allows District 6 to get on the train at the Red Line and take transit all the way to the airport, or to get on the train at Lakeline Station, or get on a park and ride at Pavilion and get to far more destinations than we can get to now with better service that is more rapid. Pre-pandemic, I was taking the commuter bus at Pavilion and taking it down to City Hall, and I saw the advantages, certainly lowering my stress levels and not having to fight traffic on 2 different highways to get to City Hall, but also the challenges where you're not able to get to all of the destinations you wish you could be able to get to in as few transfers as possible. That's what this plan will do. And it's important to note that when you look at the rollout of Project Connect through this initial investment, the Red Line improvements come first. District 6 actually gets its improvements before anybody else. Separate from that, not only is the plan great, but the method of funding and the independent oversight is critical. So we've got a long-term sustainable funding source that will allow us to avoid the problems that other cities in this country have done. We're not going to have a budget shortfall in the future. We've got a long-term sustainable funding source and an independent body that will help limit the political influence that has caused problems in other cities where you get 10, 15 years down the road and the shiny object isn't so shiny. This is the best system, the most transparent oversight, and the best plan the city has ever seen. And I hope that the voters support it.
Thank you. And Jimmy, I'll go ahead and ask this next one to you. And it's a short one, but it's an important one for Aura members. And it's, do you support reducing or eliminating parking minimums in new developments?
You know, this is where context is key. And when we worked through the land development code changes, I advocated pretty strongly for changing and eliminating parking requirements, certainly downtown, and eliminating them where you've got significant transit service. But it wouldn't make sense necessarily to do that in every corner of the city where you've got certainly parts of District 6 that are not just car dependent, but are unlikely to ever stop being car dependent. But getting those parking requirements changed and allowing the market to provide the parking level that it feels is appropriate and match the infrastructure that is present is how that should work. And it's what I've advocated for.
Thank you. Dr. Mushtaler, same question.
Thank you. Again, I think it depends on the corridor of the city that you're talking about. And I think that it is very important that we secure the infrastructure in place before we start taking away the parking, because so many people are dependent on their cars to get around. If we were just to take that away at the moment, we unhinge a new problem for people who need to get to work or run their daily tasks. So I think the key is either Proposition A is going to pass and the bond for Proposition B is going to pass, and that's going to open up some opportunity, and then we backfill that with changes in the parking ordinance. If it doesn't pass and we have to revisit, you know, then we relay out the plans and find another way to get it through. But I think the infrastructure needs to be there first, and it is going to vary a little bit where we are in the city and what opportunities people have to make choices and how they get around and do their daily tasks.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions that were not part of the questionnaire. But we have the time to ask them, so I wanted to make sure and get y'all's responses. In the comments, people had asked had we invited the other candidates to come, and we did. Mackenzie Kelly had responded that she was able to come, but this afternoon was saying that she said that she had another obligation and unfortunately was not able to join us. I apologize for not mentioning that earlier. But I am grateful to you two for being here to be able to answer these questions. And then after I ask these, I'm going to open it up to the audience for anything else they'd like to ask. So please direct them to me. Timothy told me that he is having some internet issues and will not be able to take questions directly. But if you send them to me privately or to the chat overall saying question, I will ask them to the candidates. So first question, I'll go ahead and ask it to you, Dr. Mushtaler. And it's, even if we pass a new land development code, there will still be, sorry, I'm blanking on this question. There will still be rules in place on houses to for how long that for their setback, for how many people, for how large they can be, and for how many structures are allowed on those properties. And the question is, what would you do to amend or change deed restrictions in the city of Austin? So put another way, deed restrictions can't be affected by land development code. They can be affected in limited circumstances by the city of Austin. And what would you do as a council member to affect those deed restrictions, if at all?
I don't support that. I believe that when you've made the investment, when you get to a point in your life where you're able to make that investment, say in your first home or your lifelong home, your retirement home, whatever it's going to be for you, there is nothing for a lot of people more valuable than their home. It is a homestead protected under the state, and it's where a lot of our personal finance and assets lie. So I don't think it's right for the city to go against those that have been in place and where people have chosen to live. I think we have to work with the neighborhoods to figure out how to make those changes so they're acceptable, but I wouldn't ram over them. I don't support that.
Thank you. Councilmember.
Well, deed restrictions, we did a lot of research into deed restrictions, and frankly, there didn't seem to be any possibility that the city could override them. There are limited areas where deed restrictions have been undone. Certainly the deed restrictions in Central Austin that specifically exclude people of color from owning property in certain neighborhoods, those were done away with at the state and federal levels. And so any conversation that talks about what are essentially private contracts is going to engage the state. And we need to have an honest conversation with state lawmakers about what those deed restrictions are appropriately used for. But ultimately, we talk about people wanting to preserve their homes. What we're finding are folks who want to be able to have a garage apartment or lease out a small unit in the back in order to stay where they are, to have their kids live where they live. We had one property owner in District 6 who wanted to have a second unit so his sons could live with him. And we had to go through a whole zoning case. Thankfully, in that case, there didn't seem to be a deed restriction prohibiting it. But these are the types of measures that allow families to stay together, that allow people to keep this most valuable asset.
Thank you. And Jimmy, I'll go ahead and ask you the next question. Shortly after Austin took actions to reallocate funds from our police department over the next 10 years to others, the state decided that it was going to potentially prevent us from using sales tax or being able to essentially fund our city operations. Don't know how else to say that. My question to you is, as a council member, what actions will you take what is your response to the state, not just for this action, but for other efforts of the state to try and control local control?
I mean, I wish and hope that state lawmakers would see this movement as an opportunity to partner. What we're talking about ultimately is the most fiscally responsible reform movement in municipal history. You have the police department that has doubled in cost while population only grew by 30%. I mean, you talk to District 6 neighbors, what they say is, why don't we see any police in our neighborhoods? Why don't we see any patrols? Costs are skyrocketing, but we're not getting the service in District 6. There has to be a better way. And that better way is what I've been leading on as chair of the council's public safety committee. We have delayed cadet classes in order to revisit all of the training materials, which even folks who say police is the only tool we should send to all of these issues, even those folks say, yeah, there's probably some better training on mental health and other things. So we're delaying those cadet classes, and with the money we saved, we invested in EMS, we invested in community health paramedics, we invested in permanent supportive housing, we invested in workforce development, we even invested in integral care at a level that's going to allow us to reach nearly 100% call diversion for mental health calls where we currently send an officer, but we won't have to send an officer in the future. That is the most fiscally responsible way and will result in better outcomes. This work is far from over, and with all the incendiary headlines aside, we've only changed about $25 million worth of future spending. We haven't laid off any officers. We haven't undone any departments. And while the chief is lobbying other concepts that he wants to try to address that, we are going to continue the work. I've held, as the chair of the committee, I've held 6 or 7 different public hearings on this topic just since June. It's been incredibly transparent. It's been engaged with the community, and the tens of thousands of emails I've gotten in my inbox tell me one thing very clearly. We can do better as a city, and we want to see us do better faster. That's what I'm leading on.
Thank you. Dr. Mushtaler.
Will you give me the question one more time? Thank you.
Essentially, what would be your response, or how would you handle the state's efforts to control local policy?
Well, I don't think the state has the right to do that. We have separate governance for a reason, and I believe that we do need to maintain and assert our rights for local control over how we're handling our city and our region. As far as the police go, I disagree with the actions taken by council recently. They were in budget cycle, and there was no reason to make knee-jerk reactions in the heat of the moment. I think they needed to do careful budget planning going into 2021 and think about the downstream consequences of canceling the cadet classes. We do have attrition in the law force, and we do have problems in meeting some of it. Austin has one of the lowest rates in the nation on providing for good, what's either called community policing or community involvement, where our officers are a part of our living community. I think that ties to the affordable housing thing too, because a lot of our law enforcement can't even afford to live in the area. So I don't approve of the state's threat to try and come in on the city and how we're doing our job. But I think we need to be a little bit more careful and thoughtful about the decisions we're making in how we lay out the outcomes we want to achieve.
Thank you. And I'll ask you our first audience question, and kind of related. APD headquarters is aging and ready for redevelopment, and APD wants to mostly move out. What should we do with this super valuable and well-placed site?
Well, I think we have to get APD secure first. If they truly need to move the headquarters, then that needs to happen first before we decide what happens with the site. In a perfect world, it would be really nice if that could come back in on our music industry and our arts industry, because the site is a good location. But I think we have to work with APD first.
Thank you. Jimmy.
Well, redeveloping the site of the current headquarters is one of my policy proposals that I put out during the budget process. This is a building that has gone way beyond its useful life. The toilets don't work and the air conditioning is broken, and it's just an untenable building for any city employee, much less officers and certainly those that are doing investigations and other important duties. So I got unanimous approval from the council to direct the manager to move APD into a better location, one where they actually have safe and functional office space, and then initiate a public process to explore the redevelopment of that site in a way that can help address economic inequalities and systemic inequities and be a gateway to East Austin. That site positioned between the Waterloo Greenway and the future lowering of I-35, no matter how you feel about the state spending $1 billion on I-35, is certainly going to make it a very valuable piece of property. And we can help address some of these long-standing historical issues that the city has failed to address. We're talking generations of failure. We can do that in a way that actually doesn't even have to spend tax dollars on other things. You can use a redevelopment opportunity here do on-site affordable housing, you could do workforce development, you could support arts and small businesses through a P3 process that we are also exploring in other areas. We're exploring the same thing at the Asian American Resource Center in District 1, but it's an important resource for District 6 because District 6 has this community's largest Asian population. You know, doing these P3 developments is how we can get better amenities and solve problems without having to raise taxes to do it.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and ask our next question to you as well. From the audience, the people of District 6 know their neighborhoods and know the danger on their streets. As council member next year, how will you empower residents of District 6 to make improvements to their streets, such as tactical urbanism, pocket parks, painting, crosswalks, and intersection murals?
So we've launched a pilot program. It's a new innovative program in Davis Spring, which is a District 6 neighborhood just on Palmer Lane, just north of 620. And we engaged with their neighborhood leaders directly to find the types of very low cost, small scale improvements to their neighborhood streets that can help address the neighborhood speeding they were having. In that neighborhood specifically, it's a parallel route to Palmer, and so they were having a lot of people trying to jump stoplights by cutting through their neighborhood. We are going to be able to roll out new street narrowing effects. We're going to have a new type of traffic circle at a critical intersection, and we're only going to spend a couple $1,000s to do it. It is the most affordable neighborhood speeding solution the city has ever had. And the advantage here with the pilot program is not only is it low cost, it's so low cost that if it doesn't work, you can just pull it up. No harm, no foul. But I believe that this is the type of pilot program that we'll be able to roll out across the district and allow neighborhoods to design the types of active and safe transportation improvements that can also lead to beautification of neighborhoods. You know, there are some examples where you end up doing paint or chalk on the street. You could do planters. There's a lot of really creative ideas. And I would love to see a future where this pilot program we've initiated in Davis Spring turns into a wide variety of diverse installations across the district.
Thank you. And Jennifer, I'll go ahead and just read the question. It was, how will you empower residents of District 6 to make improvements to their streets, such as tactical urbanism, pocket parks, painting crosswalks, or empowering neighborhoods to paint an intersection or a mural, which will slow down traffic?
It starts with listening to them. So as the president of River Place and the president of the limited district, our neighborhood has been facing a lot of these problems, particularly as the growth comes out here. We fund and support one of the best park systems and trail systems in the entire city. And repeatedly, we have gone to the city for help with our traffic problems, our parking concerns, and our resident safety. It took us 3 years to get the hatch marks painted for a crosswalk where the kids go between the soccer fields and the fountains. So I'm very much going to advocate for what the district needs in their areas to improve their roads, their sidewalks, and their crosswalks. We can't even get a lighted crosswalk there with a little push button. We can't get street improvements there for parking. We can't get officers out to enforce the speed limit. So there are a number of things that need to happen there, and I'm just kind of wondering why none of it's happening in our corner of D6.
Thank you. And I'll ask you the next question as well. If Project Connect passes, would you specify improvements you would make to proposed land development code transit-oriented development zoning in light of Project Connect passing? And would you expand TOD zoning around the light rail stops in the proposed LDC map?
Sorry, I'm not quite sure I understood all the aspects of the question.
Sorry, yeah, I'll go ahead and break this one up into two, and
Okay.
we'll just do that one like that. So the first part of it is, would you specify improvements to the proposed LDC's transit-oriented development zoning in light of Project Connect passing?
Well, presuming it passes and accepted by the voters, then it's going to take us back to the land development code rewrite. We need to do this. I mean, it's a 1980s code, it's defunct, and it needs to happen. But I think we need to solve the stalemate that we're at with the neighborhoods and the residents on how to do that. So I would be in support of increasing those, making those corridors function the way we're intending them to. but we're going to have to engage the neighborhoods to get that passed.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Well, first on the prior question, we've rolled out transportation improvements across the district using the quarter-cent program. And we did some pretty dramatic engagement with neighborhoods all across the district. And unfortunately, Ms. Mushtaler did not participate in that process. So we did not have any River Place items on that list. When we talk about transit-oriented development, it's not enough to just say that you have to engage. You have to be able to articulate where the housing is going to go and what it's going to look like. And it's going to upset a few folks because nobody likes change. But ultimately, that's what it takes. And just to say that you need to do engagement, you have to be able to say why the last 6 to 8 years of engagement has failed. And it's ultimately because folks want to see that development go elsewhere. But we need transit-oriented development, and the city has not done a good job rolling out TOD plans along other stations. There are TOD plans in East Austin, but how come we don't have approved TOD plans for Lakeline and Howard Station? Part of that is a landowner problem. You got land ownership issues. You've got cows on certain days that you can see across the train station at Lakeline and Howard. So we have some development problems that are tied up in landowner issues, but ultimately we've got to be able to roll out these transit-oriented development plans in order for the infrastructure to actually have enough amenities and residents and jobs to be that effective.
Thank you. And I'll start the second half of the question with you as well. Would you expand TOD zoning around the light rail stops in the proposed LDC map?
Well, we don't have proposed TOD zoning yet. I mean, this is ultimately the challenge. If you're going to make an investment, a significant investment, then you've got to ensure that you've got the housing and the jobs and the amenities that are on that line. And the form that takes is going to be context sensitive, as it was in the proposals that we were working on. And it's not going to be easy, but it's also not just going to be about, well, if we listen enough, there'll be some answer that everybody agrees with.
And Jennifer, same part of the second question. Would you expand TOD zoning around light rail stops in the proposed LDC map?
I don't know what the acronym stands for. I'm sorry. Different than in medicine.
Apologies. TOD is transit-oriented developments.
I mean, I think if you want the system to function, you have to find a way to do that. If we bring a rail or a transit system to a suburban area that has been car-based for a long time, where at the back of the neighborhood, say, the stop is at the front, but the back of the neighborhood is 3 to 5 miles out, then you're not going to get the ridership and the usage, and it doesn't really do much for the folks that are out there. So I do think those go hand in hand, and I do think you need to find a way to do that.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and have our next question for you as well. Austin's minimum lot size of 57,000 square feet is the largest in Texas and one of the largest in the country. Do you support lowering the minimum lot size?
I do.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Yes, and I advocated for that in the LDC work.
Thank you both. If anyone has any questions they'd like to ask the candidates, please go ahead and put them into the chat. We had one question from, let's see here. What is your stance on small area or neighborhood plans? And I'll go ahead and direct that one to Jimmy.
Well, we need a much better process. The neighborhood planning process, the small area planning process that the city has used has left out District 6. Yet, District 6 is, depending on the measure, the fastest growing part of the fastest growing city in America. But yet the neighborhood plans have been focused really on Central Austin neighborhoods. So part of the challenge for that is just the resources you need to do it in that old style. We've got to have a much better small area planning process that allows folks to engage and not just do one big gigantic neighborhood plan, but really think about those areas where redevelopment is necessary, where there's infrastructure in place to handle it, and then go through that process in a more concerted way. But it's got to be faster and it's got to be cheaper than the type of neighborhood planning process we've done in the past.
Thank you. And your response?
Yeah, I I do favor small area planning. I think that ties together the usage and all the functionality that you need for an area to do well. But I think we need to do it in a way that engages the residents that are affected in that area.
Excellent. Right. Let's see. Okay, here's a fun one. What and I'll go ahead and direct this towards you, Dr. Mushtaler. What's a question that hasn't been asked that you would want to be asked, and what is the answer you have for it? And I believe you're on mute.
Sorry about that. The wrong one. Why? The question is why? Why am I running? I really am concerned about some of the direction that our city is going. I believe that we're growing and we have to have a good way to handle that. But I'm not pleased with the current process that's taking place. And I really think that the city needs to abandon the lawsuit. I think that's a waste of tax dollars. I'm concerned, very much concerned about what happens forward coming out of COVID when we had to shut down South by Southwest and all of the activities last March for public health reasons. I think we might be faced with some of the same problems this year. I don't think we're going to be in a position to hold South by Southwest in the way we were able to 2 and 3 years ago. And I think we need to be forward thinking about that. So I'm very concerned about the future of the city, and I'm concerned about the direction that we're taking now. I don't agree with all of it, as I've shared with you guys. And I think these decisions that we're making now are going to be critical in laying out our 5 to 10 to 15-year plan. And I plan to be here and be here with my family. So I'd like to see the city thrive and grow in a healthy way for all corridors of the city, not just my district.
Thank you. Councilmember.
What question haven't we asked? You know, there's a lot of necessary work around streamlining and making government more efficient. This is the work that I have spent a lot of time on. I serve on the Audit and Finance Committee, but I've also advocated very strongly for doing a lot more public-private partnerships, specifically around workforce development and homelessness, but also in some of these cultural centers and libraries, because we just can't continue to grow the tax rate at the rate we're growing it without voter approval. You know, a lot of the voter approved projects prior to Project Connect didn't have the full O&M cost baked in. We're not making that mistake with Project Connect, but we've got to figure out how to retroactively solve the problems created by prior councils. You know, the work that I've done advocating for fiscal responsibility is unparalleled on the council. I've voted against budgets when I didn't feel like the numbers added up. I've supported budgets when they did. I fought hard on police and fire union contracts that reduced the cost of government by tens of millions of dollars a year. I've been unafraid to take on some of the sacred cows that represent in other cities where politicians dare not go, but those are the areas of government that bloat and grow out of control. That's the type of passionate, articulate, and detail-oriented leadership that I bring to the council, and it's why I'm seeking a second term.
Thank you. All right, I got just 2 last questions for y'all, and then we'll have some closing remarks, although those are all really good ones. This question I'll direct towards you, Jimmy. Why don't developers contribute to transit?
Well, they do. I mean, I guess there's like, what do you mean by that would be a follow-up, but let me give you a few examples. So the new Red Line station that's coming in at Broadmoor is being done in a big financial partnership with the developer at Broadmoor. There's also transit investments that the soccer stadium is going to bring in and hopefully get a station there as well. And as we move into street impact fee policy, developers will actually be able to contribute more to the road network, which, while state law says the street impact fees can only be done for cars, that's where also the buses go. So there's a lot of investments that's possible, but it's true that the full cost participation has not yet gotten to that level. And we're in the process of approving this street impact fee model, which I think is in Fort Worth is maybe the first city that did it. And so we're bringing it now to Austin. in order to do a lot more cost recovery from growth.
Okay. And Jennifer, I'll push to you. There's a clarification from the person who asked it, and it's why don't developers contribute to Project Connect, contribute to transit for Project Connect? Sorry about that.
I think you've got folks on the forum who've been working on that for a number of years who can probably answer that a lot better than I have. But I think it's a very good question. My concern on some aspects of it is that we're looking to recruit in good industry and good jobs to the Austin area. We have some really good economic opportunities in front of us going forward. And when they do that, right, where are people going to need to live and commute to get to these jobs? For example, the Tesla factory that we're looking forward to coming on the east side. So I do think we need more industry involvement in how we develop these corridors, because when they consider if they're going to relocate their headquarters or how many people they're either going to employ or bring here, they've got to consider that quality of life and how their folks are going to get to and fro work and to and fro school and to and fro the grocery store. So I'd like to see more heavy involvement. Austin is also a direct line center for technology and the tech industry, and our airport is very important. So wherever our tech corridors are and those nodes, people need to be able to get to the airport. The Nerdbird flies out at 7 a.m. out to San Jose, and there are a lot of folks that live here and commute out on that flight back and forth. So I think we need more partnership with industry and more thought around that. And if Proposition A doesn't end up coming through on the ballot, then that's one of the things I would like to do in reconsidering how we get better transportation and get this going, is to look to our industry partners to help us out with that, because it's going to have payback for them too.
All righty. And then this is going to be our last question for Jennifer. I'll direct it towards it to you. As a council member, how will you work to have more equitable representation at the Capital Area Metro Planning Organization?
And can I ask back what specifically we're asking about when we talk about equitable? Are we talking about different parts of the city? Are we talking about socioeconomics? Are we talking about?
Apologies. Let me see if there's a response in the chat. I think that'll just be the question, I'm afraid, is.
All right. Well, I mean, we need to make sure that we've got representation on Capital Metro that's hitting all the corridors, because I think that's part of the reason that maybe some of our planning isn't getting to at least areas, parts of D6 the way we'd like for it to. So we want good representation across the city. We also want good representation in the types of users. So if we have a lot of car transit people, we want to make sure we understand why aren't they participating more in the public transit options. And for those folks that are using it, we want to make sure that we're servicing their areas, in that we know what's working and what's not, what our improvement opportunities are.
Jimmy?
I think the question was about Campo. On Cap Metro, at least, there is a D6 person there. Williamson County gets a seat. Eric Stratton, who lives in District 6, is in that seat. And even the mayor of Leander, both of them have supported Project Connect pretty vocally, which is exciting on that side. Obviously, the problem with Campo is the Joint Powers Agreement. It overrepresents suburban areas given the economic impacts of the road projects that we build. I've worked pretty hard to try to build those relationships with the neighboring communities. My hope is that we can get the mayor of Lakeway to take the small city seat. I don't think it's appropriate for 4 of the 5 commissioners in Travis County to all sit on Campo. It doesn't seem fair to me. The small cities need a rep, and Mayor Cox in Lakeway is a pretty good voice for that. And I've also been supporting council members and candidates that are aligned with the need for better regional collaboration running in these other seats. You know, we have to have better partners at the table, and I've been very clear and have put my work behind it. I have not taken a cycle off. I have worked hard to support candidates in all races that are aligned with the types of policy we need for District 6.
Thank you. So thank you both so much for being a part of this forum. We really do appreciate it. Thank you to everyone for joining and asking your questions and helping to make it the informed discussion that it is. Aura is an entirely volunteer run and volunteer and membership driven organization. If you'd like to join, we are after these forums, we'll be having an endorsement vote for who we think would best represent our interests in helping make Austin a better place. You can visit us at austin or aura.atx.org. And these recordings will be posted to Facebook as soon as we get the captions uploaded. And I want to just give a shout out to Caroline Bailey, who's been our social chair, who's put those together. Thank you, Caroline. Lastly, I want to give last words to our candidates. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight. Councilmember Flannigan, we'll go with you first, and then Dr. Mushtaler. Thank you again, both of you, for joining us.
Well, thanks again, Aura, for hosting the forum today. This is such a critical part of democracy, and I'm glad that we're having a passionate and robust debate about the issues. The years that I've spent on the council, just in this first term, we have gotten stuff done for District 6. That's what I promised I would do, and that's what we've done. I have also led, chairing the Public Safety Committee, chairing Regional Economic Development, putting District 6 at the head of the table in the way District 6 wants to be, leading on issues, not just for itself, but for the whole city, and yes, for the entire region. But these challenges are not easy to solve. It takes a lot more than just engagement to find some magic solution that everyone is going to agree to. These are complicated issues, and I am unafraid to articulate specifically what we're going to do to get these problems done, as I did in 2016 when I was elected the first time around. I'm proud to have been a founding member of Aura, in fact, and some of you may not even remember back those days in that very first meeting. I can't even remember where it was held, but I'm glad to see that you guys and you all are still working hard to advocate and bring these issues to the forefront, and I hope to have your support for another 4 years.
Thank you guys very much for hosting, and thank you for the great turnout. That's terrific to see people engaged, and that's really encouraging. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in your volunteering. If I'm elected to serve on the D6 side, it would be my honor, and I will prioritize the things that I think we need most out of our city government, which is public safety, public security, and public health. I believe in the things that make Austin wonderful. I think that's why we're all here. It's a wonderful and unique gem in Texas, and we need to protect our resources and our waterways and our special topography that we have. So the growth challenges that we have are going to need to be well thought out, but I think that does need to be in partnership with the people who are here as well as the people who are coming here. Thank you for your consideration, and hope y'all have a great evening.
Thank you all, and have a great evening, everyone. Good night.